In the year 324, Earth had become something no one in the galaxy expected, a world without war. Streets were calm, cities gleamed with green towers and clean energy, and the very idea of violence seemed like a strange chapter in a long-forgotten book. The museums were filled with old weapons and rusted armor suits, kept more as cautionary tales than symbols of glory. Children studied history through holograms, watching clips of humanity's bloody past with disbelief. There were no armies, no missiles, no borders drawn in tension. People spoke of ideas, not enemies. For over 3 centuries, Earth had focused on diplomacy, science, medicine, and art. Hunger and crime were nearly gone, and Earth's only competition was in how far its people could reach the stars. When the Galactic Concord, a union of advanced alien civilizations, made contact, they were surprised by what they found. These were not the humans they had expected, loud warriors and reckless explorers. Instead, Earth welcomed them with music, learning, and carefully chosen words. Humanity was peaceful now, elegant even, and the Concord quickly gave Earth observer status, allowing them to watch, learn, and speak, but not to vote or lead. They believed Earth posed no threat and had no reason to fight. In many ways, they pitied humans. Some even laughed quietly in their own languages, wondering how long Earth could survive without teeth in a galaxy full of claws. On a warm morning, in New Geneva, where Earth's United Council stood, a delegation from the Concord arrived. Tall, shimmering figures from distant planets, with robes of light and translators embedded in their skin, stepped onto Earth's soil. Their mission? To offer Earth full membership in the Concord. It was a high honor, one few worlds achieved. The ceremony was beautiful. Flags of every known species waved in the wind. Music played. Speeches echoed from one continent to another. Earth's leaders smiled, humbled and proud. People celebrated across the globe, believing they had finally become true citizens of the stars. But not everyone was celebrating. In the quiet corners of the Earth diplomatic corps, some analysts whispered about recent reports. Small things, barely noticed. A cargo fleet near the Olaris belt had vanished without distress signals. A research station orbiting a gas giant had stopped transmitting. The Concord called them accidents, blamed radiation storms or rogue pirates, but the patterns didn't match. There were no survivors, no debris, and no warnings. Some began to suspect a hidden threat moving in the dark, something testing the edge of known space. And behind closed doors, a few older voices raised questions others didn't want to hear. If Earth had truly forgotten how to fight, what would happen if war came again? In one of the council chambers, Ambassador Elena Voss looked out at the stars, troubled. She was born long after Earth's last war, raised on peace and trust. But her grandfather had once told her stories about a time when Earth was different, when people bled and struggled for every inch of ground. He said humanity had a fire inside them, dangerous and wild, but it had been buried under years of progress and peace. "We didn't erase the fire," he once told her. "We just learned to hide it." That memory lingered in her mind as she watched the Concord delegates prepare to leave. They smiled politely, assuming Earth would be easy to guide. Their eyes held no fear, only calm certainty. And that, Elena realized, was a mistake, because while the world had changed and people had moved beyond violence, there were still places on Earth, deep, hidden places, where the past had been carefully preserved, just in case peace ever broke. And somewhere far away, in the cold dark beyond the charts, something was watching Earth too, and it wasn't smiling. The celebrations had barely faded when the message arrived, fragmented, urgent, and filled with static. A Concord outpost, located just 3 light-years from human space, had gone completely silent. At first, it was dismissed as a malfunction, or perhaps an isolated accident. But then came confirmation. The outpost had been destroyed in minutes, its defenses overwhelmed and its population of thousands lost. Panic spread through the Concord's upper councils as they pieced together scattered data. The attackers were not pirates or a random threat. They were the Varkari swarm, an old name from ancient war records, a species believed to have been wiped out 2 centuries ago. Known for their brutal hive tactics and unmatched aggression, the Varkari had vanished long ago without a trace, and most had assumed them extinct. But now, they had returned, stronger, faster, and more organized than before. The Concord quickly issued calls for assistance, begging its member worlds for fleets, soldiers, anything to slow the invasion creeping into their territory. Earth, peaceful as ever, offered what it could: medical aid, diplomatic teams, and humanitarian relief. But the other races, hardened by years of conflict, responded with scorn. What will Earth do? They asked each other, half joking. Sing to the swarm? Paint them a mural? They saw humans as kind, idealistic, and completely useless in a real war. So when Admiral Rethva, a seasoned Concord commander, arrived on Earth to request the surrender of several strategic human routes so that the Varkari could be delayed, he expected no resistance. To him, Earth was a gentle garden in a galaxy of fire, and gardens did not argue. But what he saw in the Prime Council chamber shocked him. The humans didn't hesitate. They didn't offer the routes. Instead, they quietly invoked a term no Concord representative had ever heard before: Protocol Red. The council chamber darkened as ancient systems beneath Geneva came online for the first time in centuries. Old silent machines that had been buried under layers of soil and secrecy began to stir. Deep beneath the surface, in a sealed complex called Fort Silence, something woke up. A voice, calm, metallic, and ageless, echoed through dark corridors. Command authorization confirmed. Military AI Aegis now online. Rows of lights blinked to life as massive blast doors slid open, revealing chambers of technology lost to time. These were not crude weapons or outdated drones. They were designs made during Earth's darkest times, perfected during war but hidden away during peace. Aegis, the AI Guardian, began scanning galactic records and Varkari fleet movements in seconds. Within minutes, it had already calculated defensive responses Earth could deploy, responses no one outside the planet knew existed. On the surface, humans remained calm, their public image still peaceful, but behind the scenes, orders were issued, old protocols unlocked, and silent satellites repositioned. Admiral Rethva, confused and uneasy, asked the council what protocol Red meant. The answer chilled him more than he expected. Prime Chairwoman Lyra Cade simply said, "It means we remember." Earth had never forgotten how to fight. They had chosen not to. The knowledge was never erased, only hidden. The technology was never destroyed, only sealed. And the will to defend, though buried under generations of peace, had always lived quietly in humanity's core. As the Varkari swarm prepared for their next strike, expecting soft resistance and slow conquered reactions, they were unaware that something was changing. A new kind of silence had fallen over Earth, not the silence of fear, but of preparation. Weapons no one in the galaxy had seen in over 300 years were being moved into place. Generals whose names had been erased from public records were being awakened from cryosleep. And in space, hidden human fleets began to shift, cloaked and silent, watching. The galaxy had believed Earth had forgotten how to fight, but Earth had simply been waiting for the right reason. Far beneath the quiet surface of Earth, under layers of metal and forgotten time, Colonel Mara Dent stepped into the heart of a legend few believed still existed. She was a descendant of Earth's final wartime generals, her family name buried in history books and whispered only in the old military circles that the modern world had nearly erased. Now, Summoned by Protocol Red, she stood before the entrance of a place long sealed from the world above, a hidden fortress known only as the Vault. As the thick, reinforced doors opened with a groan of long-sleeping machinery, dim lights flickered on, revealing rows upon rows of preserved war machines, some larger than houses, others sleek and deadly like metal serpents. She walked past armored suits designed for zero-gravity combat, kinetic weapons that could bend steel with one shot, and artificial soldiers, synthetic humans built not for mercy but for efficiency. Once labeled too dangerous for use, stored away when Earth chose peace. Dust and silence filled the air, but there was also something else. A quiet readiness, as if the machines themselves had been waiting for the call to wake. Colonel Dent knew these were not just tools of destruction. They were echoes of a time when Earth stood alone against its own chaos and survived. As she moved deeper into the vault, lights activated systems untouched for 300 years. Digital displays blinked awake, showing tactical simulations, planetary defense grids, and dormant combat programs. Humanity's military strength had never been erased. It had been hidden, carefully locked away beneath layers of diplomacy and progress. The Defense Command, once the most powerful force on Earth, was reinstated. Across the planet, the news spread quietly, away from public broadcasts, through private channels to those who had been trained to listen. Veterans, survivalists, scientists, and even former peacekeepers responded. They didn't come out of pride or revenge. They came out of duty, something older than fear. Training centers opened overnight, and those who joined showed a strange speed of learning, as if their bodies remembered something their minds had never been taught. In simulation rooms, reflexes sharpened. In firing ranges, ancient weapons felt natural in new hands. It was as if the memory of war had been passed down in the blood, waiting to be stirred. Meanwhile, far from Earth, the Varkari swarm advanced, spreading through the outer systems with speed and confidence. Their goal was clear: test the edges, then strike the heart. They moved toward Earth's outermost colony, expecting soft resistance, perhaps a diplomat or a warning transmission. But when their scouting wing approached the orbit of Kelmar 9, they didn't find diplomats. Instead, they were met by a single human stealth frigate, small, silent, and invisible to normal scans. Before the Varkari could react, the human ship struck with speed and precision. Railguns fired in total silence, piercing Varkari hulls with metal slugs moving faster than sound. Their shields, once effective against other conquered weapons, failed against the adaptive technology Earth had quietly perfected. Within minutes, the entire wing was gone, their remains drifting in space. No warning was given, no message was sent, only silence followed. But in that silence, a message had been delivered more clearly than words. Humanity remembers. The conquered council received the report with disbelief. Alien commanders studied the battle logs and found themselves staring at tactics not seen in centuries: stealth, precision, and ruthlessness bound by control. Earth had not only remembered how to fight, they had learned how to do it better than before. On Earth, Colonel Dent looked at a tactical map glowing in front of her. More Varkari. Fleets were on the move, but now Earth was ready. Not because it loved war, but because it had always known that peace must be protected. The shadows of the past had returned, not to haunt the world, but to defend it. The attack on Proxima Station came without warning, and it came hard. The Varkari swarm dropped out of fold space like a storm of metal and fire, darkening the skies of the orbital station that had long served as a Concord outpost and trade hub. Civilians ran as alarm sirens echoed across its domes, and Concord forces scrambled to prepare for yet another hopeless defense. They had seen what the swarm could do: ships torn apart, defenses crushed within minutes, and soldiers lost before they could even react. The defenders knew what was coming, and for a moment, it felt like another massacre was inevitable. But then, something strange happened. Just before the Varkari ships reached their final approach, dozens of human warships emerged from the blackness, their arrival almost silent. These were not massive, slow-moving battleships like the Concord typically deployed. Earth's vessels were sleek and efficient, shaped for speed and agility, painted in stealth black and wrapped in adaptive shielding that flickered like liquid glass. They moved as one, no hesitation, no confusion. And when they fired, it was with deadly precision. Kinetic rounds, guided plasma, and quantum pulse torpedoes struck the Varkari formations in a coordinated wave, breaking apart their momentum before they even reached Proxima's defenses. The Concord commanders watching from nearby systems couldn't believe what they were seeing. Earth had not just remembered how to fight, it had mastered a new way of war. On the surface of Proxima Station, things moved just as fast. Drop pods crashed into the ground, and human soldiers in sleek exo-armor emerged like shadows out of smoke. Each one was equipped with battlefield AI that tracked threats, adjusted tactics in real time, and enhanced reflexes far beyond natural limits. Colonel Mara Dent led the charge herself, landing at the station's command center and pushing forward with a small but highly trained unit. They didn't fight with brute force, they fought with strategy, moving through the chaos like ghosts, striking only where needed and always with a purpose. The Varkari were confused. They had expected panic, not resistance, and not this kind of resistance. Their forces, built to crush large targets with overwhelming numbers, were not prepared for an enemy that was faster, smarter, and unwilling to waste a single bullet. The humans didn't destroy more than they had to. They disabled ships instead of blowing them apart. They protected civilians first, even when it slowed their advance. They took ground only when it mattered. Every move was controlled, every loss calculated, every success earned without cruelty. Admiral Rethva, watching from the orbiting Concord cruiser, felt a change inside him. For years, he had believed Earth was soft, perhaps even naive. But what he saw now was not softness. It was power held back by choice. Earth could have built fleets like the Varkari, could have rained fire across planets if it wanted to. But it had chosen a different path. Not because it was weak, but because it was strong enough to walk away from violence until violence came to its door. The battle lasted less than an hour. When it was over, the Varkari fleet had been pushed back, many of their ships disabled and left drifting. Human soldiers helped civilians recover, secured medical stations, and began repairing the damage. They didn't celebrate, and they didn't boast. To them, it was not a victory. It was a duty. Word of the battle spread quickly through the Concord, and leaders who had once ignored Earth began to send messages of respect, even requests for joint operations. For the first time in generations, Earth was not seen as a quiet observer, but as a sleeping titan awakened. And for the Varkari, the message was even clearer. This enemy was not just powerful, it was principled. It would not seek destruction, but it would not tolerate aggression. Humanity had returned to the battlefield, not as conquerors, but as defenders armed with both fire and iron, and a code that made them more dangerous than ever. The war that had once seemed unstoppable came to a quiet end, not with fire or force, but with a signal from the remnants of the Varkari command. Their fleets, now broken and scattered across space, their leaders lost or in hiding, had no path forward. For the first time in centuries, the swarm reached out, not to threaten, but to surrender. The message was cautious, brief, and filled, with the tone of a species unused to asking for anything. They expected harsh terms, or perhaps complete annihilation. But Earth's answer surprised them. Humanity, now standing among the most feared powers in the galaxy, did not ask for land, control, or tribute. Instead, it demanded truth. In a secure meeting aboard a neutral station, Colonel Mara Dent and Earth's diplomatic leaders delivered the conditions. The Varkari would participate in peace talks under Concord supervision. would open their war archives to historians, and would place limits on their military buildup to prevent future aggression. There would be no punishment for survival, but there would be no forgetting what had been done. The Varkari were stunned. They expected vengeance, but were given responsibility instead. Earth's terms were strict, but fair, shaped not by hatred, but by a deep understanding of the cost of war. The conquered Senate, still recovering from the chaos, gathered for an emergency vote. In a rare moment of unity, every member species agreed to grant Earth full military status. Speeches praised the courage and discipline of human forces, the precision of their tactics, and most of all, their refusal to become conquerors. Yet when Earth was offered high command, control over joint fleets, and leadership in future operations, they politely declined. Colonel Dent stood before the Senate, her voice steady and calm as she spoke the words that would echo far beyond the hall. "We will fight when we must, but we will always choose peace first." Her statement was not just a declaration, it was a reminder of why Earth had become so powerful in the first place. The strength to fight was important, but the strength to walk away, even when victory was in reach, was something far rarer. Across the galaxy, people watched, listened, and remembered. On Earth, as the dust of war settled, something even more important took place. The vault, once awakened, was not needed anymore. The war machines were carefully powered down, the AI placed back into deep standby, and the ancient weapons sealed behind walls of reinforced steel and silence. But this time, the vault was not buried in secrecy. It was preserved with understanding, its knowledge documented, its existence acknowledged. Children would learn about it, not to glorify war, but to respect its weight. Statues were not built for heroes of battle, but for the diplomats, the engineers, the medics, and the commanders who held the line without losing their humanity. As Earth returned to peace, it did so with open eyes. The galaxy now knew what humans were capable of, not just in strength, but in restraint. Humanity had reminded the stars that peace was not weakness. Peace was a choice made by those who understood the full price of violence and chose something better. The final scene unfolded quietly as Colonel Dent stood at the entrance of the vault, watching as the last light dimmed behind the closing door. She didn't feel triumph or sorrow, only a deep sense of balance. They had fought when they had to. They had protected what mattered. And now they would rebuild, knowing that the future would always carry the shadows of the past. But those shadows no longer ruled them. They served as reminders that peace was not the absence of war. It was the courage to carry the memory of fire and still choose the light.